It became where, okay, y'all are taking over, this space has become too black, we out of here. But we doubled down. Hey friends, welcome back and thanks for joining me. Here you are reminded that you are never alone on the winding journey of life. Here you are honored, you are respected, and here you are capable of big things. I am super excited to share my thoughts on Hulu's Black Twitter, A People's Journey. Prenticepenny is the director, executive producer, all the things for this documentary. I was so happy and lucky that I got a chance to screen it at South by Southwest this year. There was something about being in a crowd of folks that were just witnessing and experiencing this culture together that all looked like me, that all had similar experiences. There was something about experiencing this documentary with them that just made it magical and even better when I went to watch it again on Hulu from the comfort of my couch and also my bed, because at some points I was watching on my phone. And yeah, I have an Android, don't judge me. I love it. What's so special about this Black Twitter documentary is that it understands that the only people that can bring a soul to any social platform are the people that use it. Without the people, it's nothing. And without the right people, it's even more useless. Some of our faves and not so faves were featured in the docu-series. Ajayi, my namesake, Jamel Hill, Van Lathan, Amanda Seales, April Rain of Oscar So White, Wesley Lowry, W. Kamau Bell, Raquel Willis, and a number of Twitter's first Black staffers, including a fave, Goddess Rivera, who once served as Global Director of Culture at Twitter. Prentice describes this as a love letter, and he brings forward all the goodness, the memes, the gifs or gifs, and some of the best tweets, also the best moments, topics ranging from Black identity to misogynoir, Barack Obama's 2008 election, the aftermath of Michael Brown and George Floyd's loss of life, and movement building. Of course, the panorama, the riot that happened at the Capitol. And then you have groups of people who are brought together, regular folk like you and me, who are sharing the experiences they had on the platform. For me, it gave like a cookout, a family reunion, a brunch. It gave all the things all at once. And while we're here, I gotta give a shout out to Hulu. Y'all are doing the things. Y'all are bringing a fantastic intersection of Black stories to life. You have my favorite, Reasonable Doubt. I can't get enough of this show. I'm so glad it's returning. And yes, I will be reviewing Reasonable Doubt. I may go back and we'll see. But I'm definitely going to review the new season. You have Black Cake. You have the documentary Hip Hop in the White House. You have the Freaknik documentary, Ultra Blackness, the many, many ways that Blackness presents experiences. You all are doing it. Shout out to you, Hulu. All right, so y'all, I mentioned that this docuseries means so much to me. So why should you give a damn? Let's explore together. When I first went to South by Southwest about 10 years ago, there was hardly any Black anything. It was very, very difficult to find any programming that was related to us and our experiences. Further, you just got this feeling that we were not welcomed and we were not allowed in the room. You know, it's a vibe. You can tell the difference between when you're wanted and when you're not. There was a group of us that no matter what we were experiencing from the outside, were still determined to make sure that our presence was known and felt and that we would have a lasting impact. This was at a time when there were very few Black people that worked in tech. We were trying to make a way for ourselves and went with one of my best friends, Mike Street. Mike was a phenom, an obviously Black, 6'5", queer, dark-skinned, Black male who was unapologetically himself so warm, so funny, and he was brilliant. And when the tech space refused to make space for Mike, Mike made space for himself and for us. Mike sadly is no longer physically with us. However, his spirit is carried with me all of the time. Before there was even a YouTube podcast vertical, Mike had the foresight to create a space for us on the platform. And that's the way that he moved. And so it was with that spirit that I carried him with me when I attended South by Southwest this year. Things are changing slowly but surely. Things are happening. And I'm just grateful that I'm here to bear witness to it and that I'm relentlessly a part of making sure that change actually happens in the tech space. I think that before a lot of people saw it, people were making assumptions about what it was and they were dragging it for filth. But there is a cultural significance to what Prentice did. So some of those reactions, y'all, were insane. They were very, very funny. You had people dragging about who was included, who wasn't included, who the hell were these people that did get included. It was just hilarious. I felt like I was kind of holding a secret inside, and I wanted to get on a stage with a megaphone and be like, y'all be quiet. But I didn't want to be dragged. There was this sense from the trailer that people who were celebrities or celebrity adjacent, those people would be prioritized. However, we then see that that is actually not the case. Prentice did a beautiful job of weaving in the people that were users, the people that were featured as GIFs or GIFs and memes, just regular folk, along with those who move the culture forward. So us, we were all the stars of this docu-series, and that's another thing that made it so special. When we start off, Prentice asked individuals to use one word to describe Black Twitter. And what came back was community, freedom, chaos, relentless, and one of my favorites, a Soul Train line. If you don't know what a Soul Train line is, Google it. Prentice said that he wanted to celebrate all that Black culture is and all that it will be. And he got a chance to really witness the power of Black Twitter when he was a showrunner at Insecure. He would actually be tuning in to listen to all that anyone had to say about Insecure. Everything from these episodes are too short, and I agree that they were, to who should be doing what, Molly, to these characters are getting their freak on with no protection, as if that's not happening in real life. He loved it and listened to all of it, and he would interact with us on the platform. When the docuseries trailer was being dragged, I was one of the individuals that went in and was like, y'all gotta calm down. And Prentice, he liked my comment and was like, thank you. Anywho, so the background is a writer named Jason Parham. He wrote a story in 2021 that was featured in Wired magazine. And the focus was on Black Twitter. And when he was asked what was behind him doing this, he said that he felt it was so important for us to capture what it was that Black Twitter meant to the culture, to document it and archive it. And I am so glad that he did. Okay, so at the start, they point out the work of Amiri Baraka. Amiri was a poet who would capture snapshots of Black life during the 1970s, including a piece called Technology and Ethos. And in that piece, he encourages Black minds to remix and deliver how we envision the future. We remixed Twitter. We made it ours, and in doing so, we made it. All right, y'all, so how I've broken this down, because there's a lot of content, is just by themes, so stay with me here. So we start out with looking at the late 90s, and I realize some of you may not have been born during that time, but it was a fabulous time. There was the emergence of Black spaces, Black Planet, Net Noir, Black Voices, Very Smart Brothers, and even in spaces such as MySpace, We were adding our sauce by blinging out our profiles so that they represented the essence of who we really are. And as we co-opted that particular community, it was interesting. We experienced something very similar to white flight in other spaces. Twitter was launched in 2006, and the prompt was quite simple. What's happening? Even the founders were unsure of the purpose of this platform, but it became quite clear. Be as funny, informative, inspirational, all of the things within 140 characters. Regular users emphasized the importance of who you followed. That was just as important as what you said. In the middle of that, Twitter was helping to democratize access to all that was happening and to help us establish a voice during the times of events such as Hurricane Katrina. One of the other things that was lifted was the importance of Twitter during the 2008 election. Twitter saw a surge of excitement and activity in support of presidential nominee Barack Obama. There was just this optimism and excitement. As one of the individuals featured said, it kind of felt like you were walking up in the club with a brand new outfit on, and your haters were wearing old clothes and they stand over to the side and they can't get nothing to drink, they thirsty, and yeah, it kind of felt like that. In 2007, executive Chris Messina introduced the hashtag as a way for people to find out the latest information around the California wildfires. And then shortly after, writer Ashley Witherspoon's tweet, hashtag you know you're black when, took off. It galvanized Black Twitter, right? It brought together all of these different silos. These groups included Black Moms Twitter, Black Shea Butter Twitter. Is there such thing as a black shea butter? But anyway, we could all relate to you know you're black when. You know you're black when your mother says, you better take the chicken out of the freezer before I get home. And you forgot. You know you're black when you're not supposed to be sitting up in the living room. You know you're black when your mother used to say, when we get over to that house, you better not ask for anything. And so you had this de-siloing happening, and then communities were created that represented a swath of black identities. By creating this hashtag, you de-siloed. So continuing in this vein, there were other pivotal hashtags that were born, and the docuseries does a great job of lifting them. Deshaun Thompson, who is a black woman, she highlighted where hashtag Black Girl Magic came from. We also saw another favorite of mine, Thanksgiving Clapback, and the history of that, Twitter After Dark, which I didn't participate in, but I'm not judging you if you did. And through these hashtags, because anybody could access them, you had the popular media accessing them as well. The likes of BuzzFeed, the New York Times, Huffington Post, they were all surveilling what Black Twitter was doing, and they were pipelining some of these ideas into their writing. We were, unbeknownst to us, influencing mainstream media. The docuseries talks about Black Twitter's influence on scandal. We were all gladiators. We were all tuned in on Thursday nights to watch what Olivia Pope, her cronies, and her father were going to do. And one of my favorites, the 2013 Zola thread, where a sex worker, Zola, was sharing her experience and had us on edge. You know, when I think about it, I'm reminded of that same texture that we got when it came to Risa Tisa's Who the Did I Marry? Zola's story is giving that, and we all know that Risa is going to come with her film just as Zola did. The docuseries also did a great job of talking about celebrity and how Twitter kind of brought together celebrities and their followings, and they felt more accessible. Who can forget Rihanna's use of the platform? Rihanna was taking no prisoners. She came for everyone from Tiana Taylor to her and Ciara having beef. Y'all remember that? Well, the docuseries does a great job of bringing that up. And at the end of the day, you can see how Rihanna got the name Savage out of that, because she was savage. Just before she was in mommy mode And then there was a focus on all of the gifs or gifs and memes that came out of this. You remember homegirl who was crouching down, squinting? Who could forget her with the clear sandals on? Turns out homegirl was at a baby shower and she was posing for a picture with her friends. They were doing kind of like that prison pose, you know, you gotta crouch down and get low. I don't do that no more, but you gotta crouch down and get low. So on her way back up, she hurt something in her knee. She popped something. And that's what we're witnessing on her face. That expression is because she had hurt her knees as she was rising up from taking the picture. So she's featured and she's finally explaining to us what she was doing in that snapshot. And it's so funny because we took it and we ran with it. And then there were the others. There was Viola Davis rolling her eyes and picking up her purse. I've used that many times. Then there was my other favorite variation of that, which was LeBron James picking up his briefcase and strutting out the door. And the queen, Miss Lanithia Leaks, has a catalog of those that we have all used at some point. When you hear Nene talk about it, she had no idea how she would influence the culture. She had no clue. I kind of wish that Nene was cut a check for every time that we use her expressions and likeness, but that's another story for another day. And you know, we will talk more about that later. You know I'm good for that. Anyway, Black Twitter would and could create stories just around visuals alone. Despite people still trying to get a handle on the importance, the significance, and influence of Twitter, around 2011, they knew that they needed to hire more Black executives to really move the platform forward. Hear me now. So that was during a time where, again, I gave you the backdrop. About 10 years ago, it was very difficult and still is for us to have a seat at the table and be kept at the table. But Twitter was making moves in this area. And one of their first hires was a Black man named TJ Adishola. Like I said that right. And I'm really grateful that this shift began to happen because it was needed in order to fully express all of the things that were to come. Namely, the loss of life for Trayvon Martin. And the docuseries does a tremendous job of lifting from end to end just how pivotal this platform was during that time and how clutch it was to lifting voices and inspiring, sparking true change. It meant everything when it came to galvanizing folks and activating them. So we're now moving on to part 2 of the documentary. And here we start off with, again, that nod to what was happening after the passing of Trayvon Martin. It cannot be overstated that that's where we began to see the true power of Black Twitter. 2012 was already a frenetic time. You had things happening such as Occupy Wall Street. Beyonce was about to become a mother for the first time. Passings of many other individuals such as Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Alton Sterling. But what Black Twitter did was it gave us space and it allowed us to be able to frame, to shape our own narratives. And along with that, April Rain coined one of the most popular hashtags that would influence all culture to date. Hashtag Oscars So White. So what was going on was that April, who is an avid film watcher, she is a fan, she was watching the nominations for the Oscars in 2015. And what she noticed was that in all categories that were mentioned, there was not one Black person at all. And so she took to Twitter, and what she said was, hashtag Oscar So White, they touch my hair without even asking. And again, all of us who are Black can relate to this. Like, you better never ever touch, and I'll go even further. Never ever touch or even reference a Black person's hair at all. So anyway, when she mentioned this, everyone could relate, and it created the space for a conversation to happen. You know, we were asking the questions, just how important are the Oscars anyway? Just how important is it to be recognized by the white gaze? Why do we care? And what that did was it influenced the Academy so that by 2020, there would be more individuals in membership at the Oscars. There would be more people of color sitting at the table for the Academy, and there would be more representation of intersectional Black stories that would be presented afterward. So then we tiptoe along to a cookout that's happening in California. So again, what the docuseries does is that there's this beautiful juxtaposition where you have these individuals who are culture shifters talking about their experience with the platform, but then as well you have the users of the platforms in various areas of the country as well talking about their experiences. And so this California cookout is a setting for one of these other conversations to take place. And in this conversation, a part that, has heart for me as a marketer is that you see them addressing how corporations would try to engage in Black speak, or what they thought was Black speak, in a lot of their campaigns. They were listening in again on what we were doing. There was that voyeuristic way as well. And then they were taking these terminologies and trying to put them into their campaigns. And a lot of them were failing at it. Why? Because, as I mentioned, then very few Black marketers led digital. And so you had individuals kind of hearing these things from the outskirts and trying to fit the vernacular in, but because it doesn't live in their soul, they couldn't do it in an authentic way. And so then we get into some of the leadership and diversity initiatives that were taking place at Twitter at that time. You have one of my faves, Goddess Rivera, is speaking, and she's talking about appearing at a conference in 2018. And she's mentioning the relevance and the power of Black Twitter. And turns out, Jack Dorsey, who was then the CEO, he heard Goddess speak and he was like, listen, I need you to work at Twitter. And that is how Goddess got her job as Director of Community and Culture at Twitter. And all the amazing things followed. So shortly after that, Twitter's Black ERG, the Blackbirds, were introduced. One of my fondest memories of engaging the Black Twitter ERG, the Blackbirds, were all of the fantastic events that they had, and they would open these events up and their house to different individuals. And so I got a chance many times go to Twitter HQ in New York and to engage in these events. One of the best events that I went to was a celebration of Nigerian culture. They had the cutest little cupcakes. This is a souvenir that I got from one of the events that I cherish to this day because it just doesn't exist anymore. The significance of this cup, the significance of what it says, and that particular time, it's just everything to me. As well, they hired Rembrandt Brown, who was also responsible for community. And then, y'all, there was a focus on the shift that began to happen in 2016 when Donald Trump announced his candidacy for president. Of course, Black Twitter reacted strongly. Some took it as a joke, but then it was complicated because, you see, for many years, the hip-hop community had lifted Donald Trump up. He appeared in rap lyrics. He appeared on TV shows. Hip hop had appeared right next to him, hand in hand. There was this whole thinking of, okay, as long as we're associated with him, then we're close to wealth. More on that later. At this point, we're starting to see a shift and a division on the platform overall. that sadly would become the template for how people would behave on social media platforms to come. You see, the algorithm, it began to reward discord. Online harassment, it was incentivized. And Twitter, masquerading as a public square, it became a place where people could comfortably spew hatred and division out loud. There's a difference between having an opinion that is opposite of another human and that of bashing, berating, abusing another human being for the way they present, the way they think, or anything related. At this point, Black Twitter began to use the platform to expose these very people that were trying to do harm. All right, y'all, and then we entered into the panty ramming. You know what happened, but we'll refer to it as the panini. Black Twitter initially thought that Black folks were immune, but they quickly learned, we all learned otherwise. As with anything that happens that is disastrous, those folks that are Black will probably be impacted the most, whether it is through health, lack of access to healthcare, lack of access to resources overall, lack of access to capital. We were the most impacted. And in some ways, we tried to fight it with humor. We named it things such as the canola oil or the panorama. We were trying to infuse humor into an unprecedented, scary, and very serious situation. And part of that lightness that was happening at the time was that we saw ourselves once again flocking to this platform, right? We had a need for community at that time. And so for a little bit, Twitter returned to its old roots. We went back to, hey, we're gonna meet up at this time to watch this thing. And one of the this things that we all watched together was what? Versus. We all had our bets on Versus. Versus was the phenomenon that brought together artists during the panini in these epic battles with each other. So you had Jill Scott and Erykah Badu, you had Brandy and Monica, you had Patti LaBelle and Gladys Knight, you had SWV and Escape, SWV won. Some of them were like 3 hours long. While we were watching these things, it appeared on Instagram. You had at one point like 1 million people watching the same thing globally on Instagram. We were, of course, on Twitter talking about it, reacting in real time outside of Instagram. It was just fantastic. What a time, what a time. And also during that time, we saw the loss of life for George Floyd. And again, because we were all at the same place at the same time, we were able to use Twitter as a platform to galvanize us online and then take to the streets offline. There was nothing like it at that time, and it actually set the standard for activism going forward. It was major. We had had enough. Black Twitter had had enough. The Black Lives Matter hashtag resurfaced, and there was even more vigor and energy behind it. The docuseries highlighted that at that point, we were fed up. We had had enough. And so with that, you saw the support of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for the 2020 election. And Joe Biden and Kamala won. And behind that, there was the famous, "We did it, Joe." I can't do it well, but you know, you get the point. But it was everywhere. This was with Vice President Kamala Harris talking on the phone with Joe Biden. I'm going to get to me doing this in a minute. But talking on the phone with Joe Biden and celebrating. And we were celebrating as well. We had been through a lot. And then fast forward a few months to January 6th. At that point, Black Twitter, we were just watching as individuals overtook the nation's capital. And our mouths were kind of agape because we were trying to figure out how we could be met with such vigor, with such and energy behind the protests that had happened the summer before, but those who were storming the U.S. Capitol, they were not. But we took a back seat. And we watched it all played out. And instead, you know how we used our energy? Black Twitter researched the individuals who did this storming. Y'all, the internet is undefeated. Twitter began experiencing further financial woes. The CEO stepped down. And the docuseries talks about how the platform struggled to get a handle on this chaos that had started regarding misinformation and harassment. And so when I'm talking about harassment, communities specifically within Black Twitter, such as the queer community, were not being supported, although they had bought their culture to the platform. Like, yes, and period, and no shade. These all came out of the queer community. They were co-opted and spread throughout Twitter for everyone to use, but yet that very same community was not getting the support from its very own community on the platform. Imagine that. And women as well were also feeling the brunt. They had since the very beginning of Twitter's existence. A great example was all that Megan Thee Stallion experienced as she tried to share her story around what happened between her and Tory Lanez. Misogynoir reared its head heavy. Policy failures at Twitter highlighted the need for better protection and guidelines for everyone that uses the platform. Again, there's a difference between a public square and a space for anybody to say whatever they want and abusing another human being. Be clear. Y'all, here we go. So the documentary then takes us to 2022, where Elon Musk makes a bid to purchase Twitter. Now, Black Twitter was shooketh at that point. We were all thinking, what will this mean ultimately for how we exist on this platform? Because you see, when we did a bit of digging, we found out what Elon Musk truly is about beyond genius. Turns out that he hated people staying woke. And his radical fears actually were part of the increase in hostility on the platform. The docuseries highlights the inevitable occurrence of Elon acquiring Twitter and the exodus of many Black important voices from the platform, both behind the curtain and in front of it. We really got a signal that the space was no longer safe. And the way that the docuseries ends is that it doesn't quite end. You know, Prentice acknowledged that at the time that he was filming the docuseries, Twitter was now called X. And the way that Black Twitter existed on the platform was no longer the way it began, but the endurance and the essence of what Black Twitter is about still remains. It still shapes social narratives to this day. That cannot be denied. Here's the thing, y'all. Black Twitter's influence on media worldwide, on culture worldwide, on movements worldwide, there's nothing like it. It continues to influence the mainstream and highlights the importance of Black voices today and always. The docuseries did an excellent job. It showed not only the contribution we made, but it did an amazing job of celebrating us. Although I enjoyed thoroughly this docuseries, in fact, it is one of the very first on-camera reviews that I am doing. That's how deep it was for me. There were a few critiques, a few things that were lingering. let me explain. The fact is that we make things, we build things, we make things hot, we give things flavor, and then we get dropped from them. This has happened time and time again. Y'all remember when Fox, I think it was Thursday nights, was mostly our programs? You had Martin, you had Living Single, you had In Living Color, and then there was a rapid switch, and it was like we were erased. The same thing happened with UPN, where you had Girlfriends, you had the Parkers, and then that disappeared. And the CW experienced the very same thing. We make things relevant, and then we are erased. Then the other thing that I thought about was that you had Kamal Bell and you had Baratunde, who were featured. Two evidently black men, right? That cannot be denied. And they're talking about black culture. But these two black men do not have black partners. And now don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with that. I am open to that myself. More on that later. And then there was my own personal experience with TJ. Now I won't go into this in detail. TJ as well is Nigerian. I don't know if he's Nigerian American or Nigerian. I am Nigerian American. And I recall that during those times when I'm telling you all about the work that Mike, myself, and many others were doing, I had tried to reach out to and engage TJ. Y'all, I can show you threads where TJ wasn't feeling it for us. TJ would not respond. And that speaks volumes to me. I don't take being in this space lightly, and if there's an individual that reaches out to me, they're gonna hear back from me. It can be that they might not hear back for a couple of weeks, a couple of days, a couple of hours, but they will eventually hear back from me. There are still messages that Mike and I have sent to TJ that are on red, even though we were both major contributors to the culture of Blacks in tech. And then another thing that I'm thinking about is what happens if a platform just disappears? You've gained all of this capital. What happens if it no longer exists? And we're kind of sort of seeing that right now, but not. And this is why this documentary is so important, because it is an archive, right, of what has happened, what is happening in real time. Today, I use X, but not as heavily as I did when it was Twitter. It just feels different in my opinion. It's not the same place or space, but I still go to it when I want to find out something that is happening. If I see something that is bubbling, I do go to it to verify and to see what other people are saying. Another thing that bugged me, and it's a small thing, in the docuseries, they were talking about verses, right? And Fat Joe and Ja Rule were referred to as millennials. Y'all, these men are 50 years old. The last that I looked, millennials are not 50 yet. Millennials are cresting on 40, but they're not 50 yet. So it kind of, it rubbed me wrong. I was just, rubbed me wrong. I'm a marketer, as y'all know. So it just rubbed me wrong. Also, the lack of stats did irk me just a little bit. I think there was the opportunity for us to highlight the importance of Black Twitter through numbers. Show a heat map, show exactly how many tweets have to date used the hashtag of Black Lives Matter. And some of this information may no longer exist because, Mr. Muskie has removed them. But I'm sure there's some way that they could have found out some of this information. Although I'm not sure. I had heard that when the docuseries launched, that actually Black Twitter started to trend, and that got changed to Black X. If that's true, shame, 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 shame. And this was a small thing. You can tell how times have changed. So to reenact, you saw a lot of this. They were like, yeah, and then she said, and then they're reenacting, And I thought back to when I was growing up, how you would reenact a conversation, you would be like this. ain't gonna tell you why you would be like this. Either you get the point of reference or you don't. So y'all, what's the next platform? I don't know. I mean, at this point, as we all know, at the point of this video, TikTok is up next, but as well, TikTok is facing a possible ban here in the United States. We shall see. But I tell you this, whatever the next thing is, it'll be a nothing burger if blackness is not represented, and it'll further be a nothing burger if blackness is not elevated and supported through a bunch of different things, but capital first, in order to lift those voices. Well, y'all, thank you for sticking with me for this review. It was so enjoyable for all the reasons and more that I mentioned to you. Remember, me, you, us, we drive the culture. We move the needle. Let everybody know and be unapologetic about it. Share this video with 2 of your girlies or 2 of your guys and help us grow this community. Be sure to follow the Ajayi Effect on all platforms. Until next time, you are capable of big things.